Countdown U. My name's Ryan Sullivan. As always, that's Andrew Wadden. And oh, baby, we had a Helsinki of a finish in the OUA.
Oh, it was fantastic, Ryan. When it comes to greatest catches in football history, many different plays come to mind. Eddie Brown's leg tip to himself in the snow-blanketed 1996 Grey Cup, well, it ranks up there. Joe Montana to Dwight Clark at the back of the end zone will always be known simply as the catch. Well, over this past weekend, we witnessed a catch in the annual Panda Game that to this day will rank amongst the top catches and finishes in not only CIS history, but the history of the world. We're in football.
So to the gorgeous brand new TD Place Stadium we go.
Some of you have heard this for 2 years about the Panda Game. The Panda Game. Man, it's going to be at TD Place. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. Guess what, man? It's now. It's right now. It's this moment. This is what you've been waiting for.
If that doesn't get you fired up, nothing will. Ravens head coach Steve Sumara getting his team charged up. The fans in the stands, well, they're just as fired up as the players. The game, it went back and forth, but with seconds remaining, Ravens needing a touchdown for the win. Jesse Mills chucks up a Hail Mary. Oh my goodness, the ball gets tipped. Nate Bahar picks it up for the TD. Unreal. Carleton win the Panda Game in unbelievable fashion, stealing Pedro back from the Ottawa Clutches. That game will go down as one of the most dynamic finishes ever in football. Bahar with an unreal performance on the day. Jesse Mills came into the game for just that final play and somehow made it work. Carleton earns its second win of the season and its first Panda Game victory since 1994. Wow.
Well, Queens, homecoming time for the Griffins. A good-looking crowd packed into Alumni Stadium for this one. Already 17 blank when Jazz Lindsay hits Lucas Spagnolo from 27 yards. That's 24-0 for the home guys. Lindsay tests his arm again and hits Adre Fraser from 40 yards. This makes it 39 blank. It's Alex Charrette's turn. He pulls this one down and finishes a 23-yard transaction. Just let it end. The Rook is dead. The Queen is exposed. The Gales fall to 0-4. They lose 66-0. Jazz Lindsay and the boys had a game, but let's give a shout out to the D, shall we? Charlie Taggart finished the day with 3 sacks for Guelph, totaling 22 lost yards for the Gales. Queens may have another smack on the way. They take on Mac next.
Homecoming at Western with U of T in town. 11,489 on hand at TD Stadium for this one. Purple Ponies already up 7. Make that 13. Will Finch to an incredibly wide open Brian Marshall. That was too easy, but it didn't stop there. Western now up 22-0. Finch to Matt Uren. Uren manages to keep his feet down, and like Manute Bol as a young child, the Western lead continues to grow. Second half now. Adam Sinclair goes unscathed right up the gut, taking it all the way to the house. Western lays the boots to Toronto, smashing them by 48.
York hosting the Marauders, the York Lions in need of a miracle this season to stay relevant. It doesn't matter to the big crowd on hand, though. Awesome to see the support pouring in for the home team. The day didn't go right for York, however. The ground game, yeah, not working. The air game, not working. Todd Hoover ran for his life on this day. Andrew Surya getting the job done. McMaster wins 49-2. Another beatdown to put under their belts for the Marauders. Also want to give Andrew Surya another shout for that forced fumble. I don't have any game balls or helmet stickers. If I did, though, you best bet you'd be getting one. Nice work.
The Lancers scored early and they scored often in a 63-4 smashing of the Warriors. Windsor pivot Austin Kennedy didn't throw much, but when he did, he connected, hitting 77% of his targets on the day before giving way to second-year slinger Casey Wright late in the second Q. Nigel Applewhite and Bo Lumley combined for 280 yards on the ground on the day for the winners.
Let's check out those OUA standings. McMaster atop the board, 4-0. Western right behind with another perfect record, 3-0. The Guelph Griffins improved to 3-1 halfway through the year. Head to the bottom of the barrel there. Queens 0-4, Waterloo as well. And of course, York rounds out the winless. Another loss makes them 0-4. Family Feud style, if you polled 100 people 2 weeks ago, they'd say this game is a lock for the Regina Rams. However, after a nail-biting overtime loss to the Saskatchewan Huskies last week, the Alberta Golden Bears are quickly letting the conference know they want out of that basement. Let's head out to Foot Field and reignite the rivalry between the Golden Bears and those pesky Regina Rams. Foot Field is the setting in the City of Champions, Edmonton, Alberta. A solid-looking crowd on hand for this sunny afternoon affair as well. The Bears already trailing 7-0 when Curtis Dell finds Adam Zeidel 35 yards up the sideline, and into the giant mustard jar he goes. We're all nodded just like that. Second cue and a scary scene for Regina Rams fans. As Cayman Shutter gets sandwiched, he goes down, he's in major pain. He would leave the game, he would not return. His replacement though, not so much of a problem. Noah Picton looks to the air late in the third and finds Addison Richards. 66 yards later, we have a 29-29 ball game. Don't do the job. Horrible celebration. Alberta would go up 2 scores, and after a Jared Giannata major, Regina needed 8 to tie in the dying seconds.
Addison Richards has it in full stride. 30, 20, 10, touchdown, Regina Rams!
Add 'em up, Richards strikes again, this time from 85 yards out. We've got a 2-point ball game, which means Alberta finds themselves in familiar territory. With the pressure on, could Noah Picton play hero? Not so much. Alberta gets its first win since November 3rd, 2010. That's pre-Vancouver Winter Olympics, if you can believe it. 44-42 your final. The GBs snap a 27-game losing skid, and for the first time since math was invented, it seems, yeah, they're out of last place. Mind you, that's pending the rest of the results from around the Canada West.
Battle of the undefeated between Calgary and Saski. It was support the troops night at Griffiths, so of course the F-18s were called in for a flyby. The game was close at the half, with the home side Huskies holding a 3-point edge, but the Dinos proved to be too strong on the day. Calgary goes into Saski on troops night and tames the Green Dogs. The running backs on both sides with big nights, while Andrew Buckley and Drew Burko both had good games. Saskatchewan gets its first loss of the year, while the Dinos' winning streak remains intact.
UBC visiting the Bisons. Welcome to beautiful Winnipeg, Manitoba, ladies and gentlemen. UBC in dire need of a W after an embarrassing homecoming loss to Calgary in week 2, 2-0 late in the first, and it's a handoff to Keenan LaFrance. He looks, finds a hole, makes some gorgeous jukes. Man against boys. LaFrance makes it look easy from 22 yards out. It's 9-blank for the Peggers. Not to be outdone, Carson Williams says, whatever you can do, I can... Oh no. Not so much. Big Evan Foster with the sack. Williams was under attack all day. This is Foster's second QB smack. Then it's James Mao, completely untouched, blindsides Williams. When he finally got a throw in, well, that one's picked. That's Tyler Fong with the thievery. UBC falls to 0-3. They lose 20-10. With the Alberta win, the T-Birds are now dead last in the Canada West. They will have a chance at their first win this weekend, though, when those Golden Bears make the trip out to Point Grey.
Let's take a look at the big board in the C-Dub. Calgary still unbeaten, sitting alone on top. No surprise there, but take a look at the one in the win column for the G-Bears. It's been a while since we've seen that. And check out those Thunderbirds, 0-3. Yikes.
All right, since the start of the new millennium, the Jewett Trophy has been owned by the St. Mary's Huskies. SMU has won 10 of the last 14 Loney Bowl championships. However, the tide, well, it's beginning to turn in Atlantic Canada. There's a new Mountie in town, and they don't like dogs.
Huskies trying to avoid the pound from the hands of the Mounties. Shift to the second cue. Mounties up 18. Make that 24. Chris Reed put 6 more on the board with this end zone scamper. Mount Allison improves to 3-0 with a convincing win over SMU. Reed put in work on the ground, tallying a game-high 167 yards. Interlock play next week sees the Mounties hit the road to Quebec, where they'll travel to face Bishops for a date with the Gators.
St. FX at Acadia. Welcome to beautiful Wolfville, Nova Scotia. Bobby Troop scratches the scoreboard first for the hometown X-Men. It's 7-0 on his 3-yard scamper right at the side there. X-Men would respond quickly, though. Jordan Catterall, the recipient of this Tavon Cook 51-yard bomb. We are knotted at 7s after 1Q. FX just exposed the Acadia D on this day. How did you get that open, Keon Hughes? X-Men win 38-29. You've got to love those high-scoring affairs. All right, it's interlock time. Coming up this weekend, FX hosts the Montreal Carabins, while Acadia heads to Sherbrooke, Quebec.
Here's a look at the standings in the AUS. Mount Allison, what can you say? The Mounties showing some major swagger right about now. Yeah, I'm hip to the kids' lingo. And as Ryan alluded to earlier, interlock play begins this weekend. It'll be interesting to see just how the AUS conference holds up against the Q.
It's Laval and it's Bishops. There hasn't been a team yet that's been able to hang in there with the champs. Do you really think Bishops is going to do it? Well, you might be surprised. The Purple are on home field. They packed a good crowd and they were hyped. Add that trio together and we may have something here. Now let's head out to the big Q. UEBEC, Quebec. Welcome to Coulter Field, home of the Gators and the big, bad red machine on this day, the Laval Rouge Or. Just over a minute into the game, and it's Felix Faubert-Lucier to shape. Hugo Richard starts the day off with a dart right up the can, 7 blank. Bishops responds quickly, though. Shane McDonald hooks up with Ron Lee King-Feline thanks to an earlier Rouge. Bishops has the lead, 8-7. You give up yet, Laval? Start the second, and it's Nathan Heather taking the dish. He shakes a couple guys. 27 yards later, into the Kool-Aid stained end zone. Bishops making a game of it and surprising the nation. FFL would be back, though. Faubert-Lucier takes another gorgeous pass from Richard. A 56-yard touchdown transaction. Then, right before the half is up, McDonald hits Vincent Chabot. Unfortunately, wearing a different jersey. That's one of his 2 picks on the day. This one ends up in the end zone. Laval up 27 at the half. Start the third, and it's over. Well, we know this guy. Guillaume Urasa with a tremendous run. This one is 39 yards later. That's another touchdown. Watch the Laval O-line here, though. Yeah, there's a reason they're the best in the country. An absolute wave. 72-17, the final for the white, red, and gold. Faubert-Lucier with his 3 touchdowns on the day. He's now tied for second place in the touchdown lead in the CIS for wideouts, while Hugo Richard retains sole possession of the CIS passing yards lead with 1,060 through just 3 games.
McGill on the road in Montreal. Here you see the first of Sean Thomas Erlington's 2 touches of the game. The Carabins improved to 2-1 with a decisive win over the Redmen. Gabriel Cousineau with a solid game for the Blue and Gray. Michael Davidson racked up over 100 yards in the air for a second consecutive game. With the loss, McGill falls to 0-3.
The Stingers stay perfect. They're D fantastic on this day as well. Jeremy Peltier notching 6 tackles and a pick, while Chris Robertson pulled down 2 interceptions with 5 takedowns. Concordia now heads to St. Mary's with the interlock, while Sherbrooke hosts Acadia.
Here's a look now at the Q standings. Laval, as usual, remain atop, but the Stingers unbeaten too? Come on! Who would have called that? With interlock play happening this weekend, Concordia has a very good chance of remaining that way at the halfway point of the year.
Whew. Is it me, or was that a weekend packed with bears?
Golden Bears, Panda Bear, and you know, I think we got a bear of our own coming up, do we not?
Right you are, Mr. Wadden. Let's send things over to our own Papa Bear. Here's where you can find CIS football on your television this weekend.
The 2011 Vanier Cup was the first national championship paired up with Grey Cup weekend. It featured the underdog McMaster Marauders and the powerhouse Laval Rouge Or in what they call the best game ever.
In 2011, the McMaster Marauders played for their first Vanier Cup against an intimidating Laval Rouge Or. Laval hasn't lost a Vanier yet. Kyle Quinlan and the Marauders ready to make the jump. First act, James Hill for this touchdown. McMaster hot out of the gate. Laval is not. Giveaways on a fumble and an interception to start their day. Rouge et Or's first score on a Guillaume Rioux punt return. Then Fred Plessius with a pick 6 for Laval. Sebastian Levesque gets a long TD. The Rouge et Or on top. McMaster strikes back. Matthew Parisi from 10 yards out rolls in, but Laval hits back again. Julian Violi-Godino sends the game to overtime. They can't believe it in McMaster, but they don't give up. Laval to hit back, and the McMaster D steps up. Now it's all up to Tyler Krapigna. Laval's first Vanier loss is McMaster's first Vanier win. Also the first Vanier to need double overtime. 41-38, the final.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Krown Countdown. It's time for the roundtable portion. We welcome in on the far side Andrew Wadden, of course, my co-host. Former member of the Queens Gales and UBC Thunderbirds, we have Gord Randall here in studio once again. How you doing, Gord?
Not too bad. How are you?
Very good. It's good to see you. And live from the Maritimes, we have Steve MacLean of Eastlink TV Sports. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to start things out with you, Gord. We have interlock coming up this week. Could it be something that the Canada West should be looking into?
From the Canada West perspective, I'm going to have to say no. Now, we as analysts are kind of biased on this issue because part of our job is to try and analyze these teams with regards to each other, and putting together a top 10 list in this country is darn near impossible. But from the Canada West perspective, no. And I don't think from the OUA's perspective they'd want to enter into it as well. And one of the problems, the big problem, is travel costs. And in order for an arrangement like that to work, the OUA would have to subsidize some of the travel costs, and I just don't see them being willing to do that. Just as a point of comparison, when I was out at Queens, we never flew to a road game. Even we went to the national final one year, it was over in Quebec City, we drove up to that too. At UBC, on the other hand, we weren't able to drive to a single road game. So it's a complete stark contrast, and I mean, UBC couldn't even set up an exhibition game this year because they're so far removed from everybody else. So I don't see that it makes fiscal sense for anybody involved. You already see the odd exhibition game from an ambitious western side coming out to Saskatchewan. A couple times they've done that. But across the board, I mean, there are teams struggling just to exist in a couple of these conferences, and I don't think that adding that extra budgetary burden would really work for them.
Yeah, now Steve, we'll go to you. We wonder on the West Coast, could it work? Over on your side of the country, does it work?
I think it's a necessary evil more than anything else. It breaks up the monotony of playing the same team in your conference so many times. So it's good to play the Quebec teams. I'd like to see like an Ontario and a Canada West start playing each other just to give more perspective on teams and where they rank. Obviously, it helps when teams are a little stronger down here so you can have more competition. But I think it's good overall.
All right, let's talk standout teams here. And Andrew, I'm going to go to you with this one. Who's standing out so far, past the quarter mark of the season? Who's punching beyond their weight class right now?
Personally, I think the Alberta Golden Bears are. After that big win over the weekend, they took Saskatchewan to overtime. Obviously, the Calgary Dinos pounded them into a fine pace in that opening game of the season, but the Alberta Golden Bears are showing that they're at least coming out to play this year. They're not just the whipping boy of the Canada West. And in my opinion, I think they're going to give UBC a game this coming weekend, and I would not be surprised if the G-Bears pull it off, although I think Gord would argue me on that one.
I already said off the air that I would be flabbergasted if that result happened, and we'll touch on some things from the UBC perspective later on in the broadcast, but I'm going to go with the Concordia Stingers, a team that was winless last year, completely moribund program the last couple of years, losing to the likes of McGill, the likes of Bishops. All of a sudden, they're back. And granted, the big asterisk involved is that they haven't played a Laval or Montreal yet, but you look at their schedule, they only play each of those teams once. Even if they take a big swing and miss, they're finishing 6-2 and 3rd in the conference. So they're doing a great job bouncing back this year. They appear to be that kind of clean-cut third team after beating Sherbrooke this last weekend, and I'm keeping my eyes on them again in the future here.
Steve, out to you.
Yeah, I like to echo the sentiment. I think Concordia are the ones that are sort of swinging above their weight class. And you look at where this program was to where they are now. I mean, being 3-0 is quite an accomplishment. Of course, they still have to play Laval, and that's going to be a loss. But yeah, Gord, I think you're right. 6-2 seems about right for that team this year.
Some absolute fantastic games last weekend. Why don't we start with you, Andrew? Picking up perhaps over towards the OUA. I feel an inclination like you want to jump in there.
Oh, absolutely. Panda Game. I mean, was there a better game? Is there going to be a better game this season? That was a fantastic finish. 55-yard Hail Mary to finish it off, and in front of that atmosphere as well. I mean, it was a fantastic atmosphere. The new students came out, because you got to think about it. Carleton ran with freshmen last year. That was what they were going to do. They went with a whole freshman lineup. So you got to figure, because the school didn't have football for so long, that now they've got all these new students who are now seeing this football team for the first time, or the first couple times, being 2 seasons in now, and having a win like that. Nate Bahar, I mean, that kid's a fantastic receiver, going to be one of the best receivers in the entire CIS moving forward. That game, their second win of the season, just awesome. I mean, you can't say any more. And then just to win Pedro the Panda at the end, I mean, it's just, I mean, they can walk away with this season with their heads high just after that win alone.
Absolutely. Steve, why don't we go to you?
Maybe not the Atlantic game, but some Atlantic flavor, and that is Carleton with head coach Steve Samara. It's great to see what he's done with that program. He's going to have that program contending nationally year after year very soon. He's that good of a coach and recruiter. Hey, just the ending alone, I mean, come on, how do you get better than that, right?
That was incredible. 12,500 too at TD Place Stadium. Just fantastic. Gordon, why don't you wrap us up on this one?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that game as well, just because I think that that's a big mark on Carleton's return to prominence here. And I think you could argue that with the way they funded and set up that program, that it was inevitable, but a big step in the right direction for them. And the other thing that stood out about that game, the most Canadian crowd or field storming I've ever seen in my life. Everybody waiting very orderly behind one another, waiting for their chance to hop the fence and go jog onto the field. I'm going to come back out west, however, and we talked about the Alberta Golden Bears already. They pulled off a victory, this time at home, against the Regina Rams. And Regina, who we thought looked pretty solid in week 1, has had a couple of hiccups in a row now. And all of a sudden, it's shaping up to be a 2-tier race in the Canada West, and those bottom 3 teams seem to be UBC, Regina, and Alberta, but they're all slugging it out. It isn't like Alberta's just a cupcake in years past. So should be an interesting matchup here in Vancouver this weekend between the University of Alberta and the University of British Columbia to see who brings up the rear in that division.
Now we're going to get to quick hits, 30 seconds or less. Something in the CIS that stands out to you that perhaps we haven't covered. I'm actually going to start this because you just mentioned a good point of the fans storming the field. They had that a little bit with the Alberta Golden Bears, and we have the highlights of it. You go back to the start of the show, and they kind of cut like a tiptoe because they're going over rocks. No one wants to twist an ankle. So when you make stadiums, I love foot field, don't get me wrong. When you make stadiums, you got to make it accessible.
Nobody else loves foot field. That is probably the worst.
Well, I didn't play there.
The entire CIS.
So from the fans' point of view, on my couch, it looks like a fine-looking place, but your standpoint, maybe not.
The surface is hard as a rock. I'm going to go with the UBC Thunderbirds, and I know that Andrew alluded to this on last week's broadcast, but memo to Coach Olsen, get back to the run. I understand that you have a young offensive line, but you also have a returning 1,000-yard rusher in the backfield and one of the top recruits in the country joining him. You have the kind of firepower in that backfield to be running on first down and second down instead of the opposite. You had 85 yards rushing this last week. They didn't have a single game under, I think, 150 last year. You got to get back to the run. It's your bread and butter. I know you're a former quarterback, but that's the way your team is constructed as it currently stands. So go to the strengths of your offense.
Andrew.
Well, Alex Skinner leaving Laval and possibly transferring somewhere for next season. There's speculation all over right now. Will he come out west? I mean, obviously UBC could use him. Manitoba could use him with Jordan Yance leaving next year. But the consensus that I'm kind of getting is that he might stay or go back to his home in Ontario and go to either Queens or Guelph, with Jazz Lindsay leaving Guelph, Billy McPhee leaving Queens. Alex Skinner could step in there, and God knows Queens could use a good quarterback moving forward, because Billy is great, but that team is going through some growing pains right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, why don't you take us home?
I like Tavon Cook, the quarterback for St. FX. It's his 3rd year in the league. The first 2 years, he looked completely lost. Like, it was just the league was too big and too fast for him. But this year, under the guidance of Steve Snyder, who's come back on as the offensive coordinator, he's a former quarterback at the school. Cook has 7 touchdowns and 1 interception so far through 3 games, and he's looked in control, which is something we haven't been able to say about him before.
All right, that was great. And just a side note, Steve, I'm going to need one of those golf shirts. If you wouldn't mind sending one out, that thing is sharp.
I'll trade you for one of those Blazers. How's that?
Oh, they're limited edition. I don't know. Well, for Steve MacLean, we have Andrew Watt on the far side, Gord Randall in the middle. I'm Ryan Sullivan. Thank you so much for joining us here on Krown Countdown U. We'll catch you next week, and here's your CIS Top 10.
Number 10. Number 9. Number 8. Number 7. Number 6. Number 5. Number 4. Number 3. Number 2. And number 1. Thanks for watching Krown Countdown U. Now, let's get out to the game.